My name is Odessa Whitmore. I'm 74 years old, and I know the exact sound that changes a life. It isn't thunder or a gavel. It's the soft whisper of paper sliding across polished wood. Before I begin, my dears, if you're listening to this, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Whispers of Mama Ruth. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your messages remind me that I'm not alone when I share these memories. Now, let me tell you about the day a stranger's courage saved everything I had. I went to the bank that morning with my pearls on and my spine straight. The marble floor was cold under my heels, and the air smelled like lemon polish and old money. I was there to finalize a few documents. That's what my son's wife had said, simple things following my hip surgery. A little housekeeping to make life easier for everyone. I held my purse the way my mother taught me, tucked under my arm where hands and eyes couldn't wander. The cashier, young, brown-skinned, a neat bun and careful lashes, looked up, and then looked longer. Not the fawning kind of long, the measuring kind. Her name tag said Janelle. When I slid the folder across the counter, her gaze flicked from the papers to the glass-walled office where my son Elliot and his wife Marina sat with a man in a navy suit. The man was smiling with his teeth. Elliot was scrolling on his phone. Marina was watching me like a hawk that had learned to purr. Mrs. Whitmore? Janelle's voice was steady, but her fingers were not. She took the folder, power of attorney, new beneficiaries, the polite machinery of erasure dressed up in serif fonts, and fed a page into the scanner. The machine hummed. Somewhere behind me, a pen clicked. Shoes squeaked. A printer coughed out a run of pages like a tired confession. Janelle leaned forward as if to straighten the stack. Her hand moved once, twice, and then a small, folded square appeared beneath my wrist, as delicate as a moth. I looked at her. She didn't look back at me. She watched the glass office instead. I opened the note with the sort of care you reserve for old photographs. Don't sign. They're stealing everything. The world did not tilt. It narrowed. The sound of counting bills behind me turned into the ocean. The lemon polish cut the air like gin. For a breath, I could see the shape of my whole life in the gleam of the counter. Decades of careful saving. My late husband's laugh falling into silence. Recipes handwritten in blue ink. Sunday dresses. The garden he built me in a corner of red earth. I saw the house with the brown door. The quilts folded smooth. The piano with the sticky key. I saw Elliot at 7, gap-toothed and gummy with jam, promising he would love me forever. I tucked the note into my glove like a lady placing a secret where no one can touch it. "Ma'am," Janelle said, louder now, a little courage pressed into the word. "Do you have any questions about what you're signing?" I had 1,000, but I started with one. "Who prepared these papers?" Janelle glanced toward the office. "The private banker coordinated with your family." She swallowed. "They said it was time to consolidate." Consolidate. Such a clean word for a dirty intention. The banker in the navy suit stepped out and motioned me over as though I were a file to be fetched. "Mrs. Whitmore," he sang, "we can take care of everything in one sitting. If you'll just sign where I've tabbed, yellow flags are yours." Marina appeared at his shoulder. All gentle sympathy. "Mama, oh," she cooed, using the name she saves for when she wants something. "Let's sit in the office. You've been standing too long." I did not move immediately. I placed my hand over the papers as if blessing them. My wedding band, plain gold, tapped once against the oak. I could feel my heartbeat in the metal. "What exactly," I said, keeping my voice warm as Sunday morning, "do these documents do?" Navy suit smiled wider. "They simplify decision-making. In case you're ill. In case you're tired. In case you're overwhelmed. Your son and daughter-in-law can act on your behalf. Seamless. His eyes flicked to my pearls. You keep full dignity, of course. Full dignity. Partial ownership. No control. Elliot finally looked up from his phone. And for a second the boy I raised floated to the surface, the one who learned to tie his shoes on my knee, who cried when he broke the sugar bowl and told the truth anyway. Then he blinked, and the man who prefers easy money to honest work returned. Mom, just sign, he said, already bored. We're late for a thing. Janelle's throat worked. She tapped one nail softly against the scanner once, twice, 3 times, the smallest drumbeat of warning. I slid the top page toward me. The legal paragraphs bristled with whereases and hereinafters. Near the bottom, beneath the final signature line, a sentence crouched like a snake in tall grass. This appointment is immediate and durable. Immediate. Durable. Like a stain. I thought about my garden, about how you can pull a weed without mercy, and it still finds a way to return. If you leave one hair of root. I thought about the night Marina stood in my kitchen and said, you shouldn't worry about bills. Mama, oh, let us carry your burdens, and then asked for the checkbook. I thought about the way Elliot started saying our money when he meant mine. I lifted my pen. Elliot exhaled. Relieved. Marina folded her hands. Navy suit primed his applause. Janelle didn't move at all. She watched my hands like a nurse watching a pulse. I wrote my name carefully on the line just above the signature block, Odessa Whitmore. And then I stopped. I did not cross into the final rectangle. I let the pen hover there, ink fat on the tip. A storm waiting. Mrs. Whitmore. Navy suit prompted. I raised my eyes and smiled the old Whitmore smile. The one my husband used to call my Sunday lightning. Before I sign, I said, I'd like to ask one more question. And I unfolded the little square of paper and set it on top of the documents where everyone could read it. The word sat there between us, quiet as a blade. Don't sign. They're stealing everything. Marina's face did not move, but her fingers tightened on her purse. Elliot's phone went dark in his hand. In the glass of the banker's office door, I saw us all reflected, me with my pearls and my history, my son with his hunger, my daughter-in-law with her patience worn thin, and the neat young cashier who had chosen courage in a room that rewards silence. My question is simple, I said, voice steady now. Who, exactly, is they? No one answered. The bank thrummed around us, counting someone else's money. I capped my pen. The note lay like a tiny, ticking clock. And for the first time since I walked in, I felt the floor steady under my heels, because I understood that the most dangerous signature is the one you give away without reading your own name. Silence is a strange thing inside a bank. It isn't real silence. It's tension wrapped in politeness. You can still hear the printers, the clicking pens, the murmurs of people pretending not to look. But when I placed that note on the table, the air thickened so completely that even the clock above the teller's window seemed to hold its breath. The man in the navy suit was the first to recover. His smile stayed, but the warmth behind it froze. I'm not sure what this is about, he said carefully, as if words themselves could explode. But I assure you, Mrs. Whitmore, everything you're signing has been fully approved by your son. That's exactly what I'm afraid of, I said. My voice didn't rise, but it carried, the way a mother's voice does when she has had enough of being lied to. Elliot stood, confused anger flickering across his face. Mom, what is this? He asked, snatching at the paper. I pulled it back before his fingers could touch it. Marina reached for his arm. whispering something I couldn't hear, but I could read it on her lips. Stay calm. She's old. Don't make a scene. It's funny how people forget that age doesn't erase intelligence. It sharpens it. Who wrote this? Elliot demanded, waving toward the cashier. Janelle's eyes widened, but she didn't speak. I saw fear flicker there. Not for herself, but for me. I realized in that instant she must have overheard something, maybe seen the transfer forms, the hidden accounts, or the way my name had been slowly disappearing from the paperwork I'd trusted to protect me. Navy Suit adjusted his cufflinks, his tone smooth again. Let's all calm down. Mrs. Whitmore, I assure you, your children are only trying to help. This note must be a misunderstanding. Then let's read it together, I said, sliding it closer to him. Don't sign. They're stealing everything. Seems plain to me. Marina stepped forward with that practiced sympathy, the kind that looks like love until you realize it's performance. Mama O, you've been under so much stress lately. You mix up things sometimes. Remember last month when you misplaced your jewelry box? I looked at her, steady. Yes. And then you found it. In your car. Her smile cracked like old porcelain. For a moment, nobody breathed. Mrs. Whitmore, the banker said, voice tightening, perhaps it's best if we reschedule when you're feeling better. These documents require clear understanding. I understand perfectly, I said. That's why I'm not signing. Elliot slammed his palm on the table. The sound echoed through the marble lobby, like a gunshot. Heads turned. Somewhere, a security guard shifted his weight but didn't move. Forward. My son, my only son, glared at me like I was a stranger standing between him and a door full of money. You don't know what you're doing, Mom. He snapped. We're trying to help you. You're tired, confused, and stop calling me confused, I said quietly. It's not confusion when a woman finally wakes up. Janelle flinched, her lips pressing together in a thin, proud line. For the first time, she looked me straight in the eye, a silent apology written across her face. I nodded once. The smallest thank you a woman can give another in public when truth is dangerous. Marina tried again, her tone dripping with sweetness. Odessa, think of what your husband would have wanted. I smiled then, a small, tired curve of the mouth. My husband would have wanted his son to earn what he gets, not steal it with paperwork. The words sliced through the air, and something in Elliot's posture broke. The fury drained out of him, replaced by that desperate emptiness people wear when their plans start to crumble. 4 years, I had mistaken that look for sadness. Now, I recognized it for what it was. Panic without empathy. Give me those papers, I said, extending my hand. Navy Suit hesitated, but in the end, I think he knew better than to argue with a woman who has nothing left to lose. He passed them back, and I tore the signature page in half right there on the counter. Gasps rippled through the lobby. Marina's face twisted. You just made a huge mistake, she hissed. No, I said, tucking the torn papers into my purse. I just corrected one. Janelle looked like she might cry, maybe from relief. Maybe from fear of what her managers would say. I leaned toward her gently. Thank you, I whispered. You did the right thing. She nodded once, almost imperceptibly. Be careful, she murmured back. As I turned to leave, Elliot called out, Mom, you can't walk away from this. I paused by the door, the bank's glass reflecting the ghost of my younger self. The woman who believed love could be proven with money. Watch me, I said, outside. The sunlight hit my face, sharp and golden. For a moment, the city noise felt like applause. I stood there on the steps of the bank, clutching the shredded contract in one hand and my dignity in the other. I didn't know what would come next. The arguments, the guilt, the loneliness. But I knew this. No matter how much they tried to take, the only real fortune I had left was my clarity. And that, I realized, was worth more than any signature on earth. The sound of the glass doors closing behind me was sharper than I expected, like the world had just drawn a line between before and after. I stood on the top step of the bank, sunlight sliding down my face, the city moving around me as if nothing extraordinary had happened. To the strangers passing by, I was just another old woman with a handbag, but inside, I felt like someone who had survived a storm no one else had seen. For the first time in years, I didn't walk straight to the bus stop. I stood there, letting the wind lift the edge of my scarf, letting my heart slow down. I looked at my reflection in the glass door, the pearls, the careful hair, the trembling hands, and I whispered to myself, "You did it." But the truth of it came crashing in almost immediately. If Elliot and Marina had planned that meeting with lawyers and papers, then this was no misunderstanding. It was a plan, a quiet, deliberate theft dressed up in politeness and signatures. And people don't just give up when their plan collapses. They come back hungrier. As I walked away from the bank, my phone began to buzz. Once, twice, 3 times. Elliot. Then Marina. Then again, Elliot. I turned the phone face down in my purse. Let it ring. I wasn't ready to hear the new version of their voices. The one that would shift from guilt to accusation, from sweetness to rage. When I reached the corner, I stopped in front of a small cafe. The smell of coffee hit me, familiar and grounding. I hadn't sat somewhere just for myself in years. I always rushed to the store, to the post office, to the bank, always for someone else's needs. I ordered a black coffee and sat by the window, watching the cars blur by. That's when the shaking began, not from fear, but from release. My hands trembled as I unfolded the little square of paper again, smoothing its creases on the table. The ink was slightly smudged from my glove. Don't sign. They're stealing everything. Whoever Janelle was, she had risked her job, maybe more, to warn me. And that meant she'd seen something solid. Something that would have destroyed me if I hadn't stopped in time. My signature would have handed over my accounts, my investments, maybe even my house. My entire life's work, gone with one careless pen stroke. I sipped my coffee slowly. It tasted bitter, but alive. I looked at the people outside, the mothers, the businessmen, the teenagers laughing into their phones, and I wondered how many of them were one signature away from losing everything too. For years, I had been everyone's safety net. I paid for Elliot's college, then his failed business, then Marina's consulting project that never existed. Every time they said just a little help, I said yes. Because that's what mothers do, right? They keep saying yes, until there's nothing left but silence and overdrafts. The cafe door opened, and a gust of air brushed my neck. A voice followed, soft, careful. "Mrs. Whitmore." I turned. It was Janelle, the cashier from the bank, out of her uniform now, wearing jeans and a navy coat. Her eyes darted around before she sat across from me. "I'm sorry," she said immediately. "I shouldn't have followed you, but I needed to make sure you were okay. Do you always risk your job for strangers?" I asked gently, her cheeks flushed. "Not usually, but I heard things. Mrs. Whitmore, your son and his wife have been visiting the bank almost every week. They talked to Mr. Howland. That's the senior account manager. About transferring your investment portfolio into a shared trust. They said you were sick, that you asked them to handle it for you. My stomach turned cold. And did they already move anything? Not yet, she said quickly. That's why I panicked. The lawyer brought the final authorization forms this morning. If you had signed them, the accounts would have been merged under your son's management. You'd still see your balance, but he would control every transfer. I took a long breath. So I almost signed myself out of my own life. Janelle nodded, eyes glistening. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said anything, but I couldn't watch it happen. I reached across the table and placed my hand over hers. You did the right thing, and you didn't just help me. You reminded me that decency still exists in this world. She smiled. Barely. They'll probably come back. Be careful, Mrs. Whitmore. I nodded. Let them come. This time, I'll be ready. When she left, I stayed in that cafe until the sun dipped low and the reflections on the window turned the street into liquid gold. My phone had stopped buzzing hours ago. Silence again. But this time, it didn't scare me. I took out a small notepad from my purse and began to write. To my attorney. Mr. Webb, urgent meeting requested. Need to discuss asset protection and family access restrictions. The first step to freedom, I thought, isn't walking away. It's locking the doors they used to walk through as I left the cafe. The city lights began to glow, and somewhere deep inside me, I felt a new kind of calm, the kind that comes after you realize you've been asleep for too long, and the world is finally, painfully, beautifully awake again. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. For a moment, I just lay there, listening to the slow rhythm of my old house breathing, the pipes ticking, the faint hum of the refrigerator. It felt strange to wake up without dread, without wondering who might need something from me before I even poured my first cup of coffee. I dressed carefully, not out of vanity, but as armor. The same gray coat Robert had bought me for our 25th anniversary. The one I'd kept hanging in plastic like a relic. I wore it because that morning, I wasn't just a mother or a widow. I was a woman preparing to take back her life by 8 a.m. I was standing in front of the law office of Mr. Paul Webb, a man my husband had trusted for decades. The brass plate by the door gleamed in the early light. Inside, the smell of coffee and paper mixed with something familiar, seriousness. The receptionist, a kind woman with silver hair, looked up. Mrs. Whitmore, Mr. Webb will see you right away. He was already standing when I entered. Tall, gray-suited, with the steady hands of someone who deals with other people's crises for a living. Odessa, he said softly, it's been a long time. I heard about Robert's passing. I'm sorry we meet again under difficult circumstances. I nodded, sitting down. I need your help, I said, and this time, not for them, for me. He smiled faintly. Then you've already taken the most important step. I slid the torn documents across his desk and the folded note on top of them. He read both carefully. When he finished, he looked up with an expression that was equal parts concern and admiration. You were very lucky, he said. If you had signed these papers, they'd have gained full financial control. Your accounts, your house, your medical decisions, everything. It's a very old tactic. I repeated. It's called elder financial exploitation, he explained. Usually, it's disguised as love or concern. Children or relatives claim they're helping with bills or simplifying life. Then they quietly transfer assets, change wills, open joint accounts. By the time the victim notices, their money is gone. The word victim sat heavy in the air. That's what I almost became, I said. Almost, he agreed. But you didn't. And that changes everything. He began listing what we needed to do. Cancel any existing powers of attorney. Freeze joint access permissions. Move my funds to a secure account. And set legal restrictions on any financial changes without my direct signature. And one more thing, he said. We'll file a record of attempted financial coercion. It creates a paper trail. If they try anything again, the law will be on your side. I watched him write, his pen scratching with quiet authority. It felt like someone building a fence around my peace. Mr. Webb, I said slowly, why do people do this to their own family? He stopped writing and looked up. Because greed doesn't always look like greed, Mrs. Whitmore. Sometimes it looks like entitlement dressed in love. The words sank deep. I thought of Elliot's tired excuses, Marina's soft manipulations, the way they used words like help and family as keys to open my wallet. He continued, I've seen dozens of cases like yours. The hardest part isn't the money. It's accepting that the people you love most can see you as a resource, not a person. I swallowed hard. I think I already knew, I admitted. I just didn't want it to be true. Mr. Webb nodded gently. Then today, we make truth your ally. No more shame. No more secrets. He turned the torn papers toward me. Do you want to press charges? I hesitated. Pressing charges meant war. With my son, with the woman he chose, with the past I'd built around them. Not yet, I said finally, but I want protection. I want boundaries. He smiled. That, I can give you? He began drafting new legal documents, ones that protected me this time. I watched the words form. Power of attorney. Self-exclusive. No beneficiaries. No shared access. Each line was like a lock clicking shut on a door that had stayed open too long. When he finished, he slid the forms toward me. These make you untouchable. For the first time in years, I signed my name without fear. The pen didn't tremble. It moved like it remembered what strength felt like. As I stood to leave, Mr. Webb said quietly, one more thing, Odessa. Change your locks. If they had a plan this detailed, they might have copies of your keys. I nodded. I will. Walking out of that office, the air felt different. Not lighter, firmer. Like gravity had shifted back into my favor. I wasn't naive enough to believe this was over. Elliot and Marina wouldn't give up easily. But for the first time, I had allies. I had laws. I had myself. And that, I thought, was the beginning of the kind of peace that doesn't need anyone's permission. I drove home with Mr. Webb's words ticking in my head like a metronome. Change your locks. Close the doors they used to walk through. The street was quiet when I turned the corner. The kind of weekday quiet that sounds like a held breath. My house sat where it always had, brick and stubborn. The brown door wearing the small scratches of our life. Halloween tape that never fully came off. A nick from Robert's toolbox in 1989. The faint outline where a wreath had hung for 30 Christmases. Inside, the air still carried my morning. A cup on the drying rack. The spode saucer by the sink. A cardigan tossed over the back of a chair as if a softer version of me might return any minute and pick it up. I stood in the entryway and listened. The house made its familiar old noises. A settling beam, the hush of the heater, a distant creak like a remembered step. Nothing sinister. Still, I locked the door behind me and slid the chain. I called the locksmith Mr. Webb recommended, Torres and daughter, and a warm voice answered on the second ring. We can be there in 40 minutes, Mrs. Whitmore. 40 minutes felt like a lifetime. But I said yes, please, thank you, bring everything. While I waited, I walked the perimeter of my own life with fresh eyes. The small bowl by the door where I'd kept a spare key was empty. Not forgotten. Empty. I could see the faint dust ring where the metal used to sit. In the hallway, the office door, usually closed, was open by an inch. I had closed it yesterday. I know because I always pause to touch the frame. The way you touch a shoulder in passing when you love someone. On the desk, the ledger I keep for utility payments was centered to neatly. Small things. But the small things are where you hear the whisper of a trespass. I checked my purse, the torn papers, the little note, my wallet, the old photo of Robert in his Sunday hat. All there. I breathed, slow and deliberate. The way my doctor taught me when the world tries to sprint inside your chest. The van arrived right on time. Caleb Torres, compact, brisk, with forearms that understood stubborn metal, and his daughter Nia, tall and sharp-eyed, wearing a tool belt like a crown. We'll rekey every exterior lock, Caleb said, scanning the door frames with a craftsman's frown. Deadbolts, too. Want a keypad on the back door? Nia added, and strike plates reinforced. If anyone kicks, your door kicks back. I liked them immediately. People who fix things carry a different kind of honesty in their hands. As Caleb removed the first deadbolt, he held up the cylinder to the light. See that? He asked. Tiny parallel scratches etched the brass like cat whiskers. Looks like someone's been impressioning your key, making copies. He didn't say who. He didn't have to. We moved to the kitchen door. The wood around the strike was splintered just enough to tell a story. Nia ran a finger over the grain. They didn't force it, just wore it down with lazy closing. Common when people come and go like it's theirs. She met my eyes, steady and kind. Not anymore. While they worked, I opened my laptop and followed Mr. Webb's list like gospel. I set up new bank alerts, texts for any transaction above $50. I changed passwords. The long, ridiculous kind with letters that look like laughter. I moved a portion of my savings to the new account he'd created that morning. Each click felt like threading a lock through a chain link fence. Not pretty, but strong. My phone buzzed face down on the table. I let it sing to itself and kept typing. A text popped up on the screen anyway. The preview unavoidable. Elliot. We need to talk now. Then Marina. We can fix this if you stop listening to strangers. Then a number I didn't recognize. Private Banker Holland. For your convenience. We can have a notary come to you. The audacity dressed itself as customer service. Nia tested the backdoor keypad and grinned. 4 digits. Your choice. Don't use a birthday. Fine, I said, tapping in a year no one but Robert and I ever remembered. The year we almost gave up on a garden. That bloomed anyway. The lock chirped like a small victory. Caleb replaced the final cylinder on the front door. And we stood in the entryway while he explained new keys. How many copies? Where to store the spare? Not in the obvious places, he said, nodding at the doorframe, the porch rail, the mailbox. People think they're clever. The only clever is with you. When they left, the house sounded different. Not louder, truer. Like someone had turned down the noise of strangers. I made tea I didn't intend to drink and stood by the window watching the street. The winter light softened the edges of the parked cars. A child clattered past on a scooter, a red scarf fluttering like a small flag. Ordinary life resumed, as it always does, even when yours is breaking into a new shape. That's when I saw the sedan, not Elliot's dented car, not Marina's white one either. This was a dark, clean vehicle that didn't belong on my street. The kind that carries people whose shoes don't creak. It slowed in front of my house in a way that made time wobble. The driver glanced up, saw me watching, and pulled into the curb with the precision of someone who practiced looking non-threatening. A man stepped out. 30s, tidy suit, leather portfolio, process server tidy. He wasn't selling anything. He was delivering something people don't want to buy. I opened the door only as far as the chain allowed. Double quotes, Mrs. Odessa Whitmore? He asked, professional voice neutral as an envelope. Yes. He held up the leather folder so I could see my name on the first page without touching it. I have documents to deliver. Petition and notice. Emergency application. For what? I asked, though some part of me already knew. Temporary conservatorship hearing, he said, careful. Filed by family. Hearing set for 72 hours from now. Time bent. Not the end of the world. Just the tightening of a rope you didn't notice you were wearing. I looked at the shape of the papers through the plastic sleeve. Somewhere inside, a name I gave to a child would be printed in adult ink beside words like incompetent and immediate relief. Leave them on the step, I said. He nodded, placed the packet gently, and stepped back with the courtesy of someone trained to be a storm without thunder. You've been served, ma'am. Good afternoon. The sedan slid away, the air smoothing itself as if nothing had disturbed it. I lifted the chain but didn't open the door. I stared at the packet through the glass, at my life condensed into clipped lines that believed they could define me. My hands didn't shake. Not this time. I took out my phone and called Mr. Webb. He answered on the first ring. Odessa, they've filed, I said. 72 hours. He exhaled once. Not surprise, acknowledgement. All right, he said, voice already moving into strategy. Listen to me. We prepare. We document. We test. We win. Behind me, the new deadbolt gleamed like a sentence with a period at the end. Make a list, I said, my voice calm as a clean kitchen. Tell me what to do. Every hour. We start now, he replied, and Odessa locked the door. I looked at the packet on the step, at the neighborhood carrying on, at my own reflection in the glass. Pearls, gray coat, a woman who had decided to be heavy again in the places that mattered. I slid the chain, turned the deadbolt, and did as I was told. On the other side of the glass, the papers waited like a dare, and the clock began its count toward a courtroom where people would try to take my name out of my own mouth. That night I didn't sleep, not because of fear, but because of clarity. Real clarity keeps you awake. It doesn't whisper, it hums. Every sound in the house became part of that hum. The clock ticking on the mantel, the radiator sighing like an old friend, the faint scratch of branches against the window pane. I sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad in front of me, writing the names of every person, every payment, every moment that had led me to this war. By sunrise, my notes filled 6 pages. Dates, amounts, receipts, screenshots of transfers. All the little fingerprints of generosity that had turned into evidence. I added one final line at the bottom. Love should not require proof of payment. At 9 a.m., I was at Mr. Webb's office again. He was already waiting with 2 coffees, one for him and one for me. You look awake, he said, studying my face. I've been awake for 3 years, I said. I just didn't realize it until now. He smiled, thin and proud. Then we're ahead of them. We've got 72 hours to build your fortress. Ready, ready, I said, and I meant it. We began with the basics. My financial records. I gave him every statement, every withdrawal, every transfer from the past 5 years. He organized them into folders with the precision of a surgeon. See this pattern? He said, pointing to the spreadsheet. Regular transfers on the 5th of every month, labeled family support. Consistent, traceable, voluntary. That alone proves you were in full control. Next, he opened a new document. We'll need witnesses, he said. People who can attest to your mental clarity and independence. Friends, neighbors, professionals who've interacted with you recently. Janelle, I said immediately. The cashier, she's the reason I didn't sign. Perfect. I'll have my office reach out. Anyone else? My locksmith, Caleb, and his daughter, Nia. They saw what I found in the locks. And my doctor, Dr. Patel. She'll confirm my physical and mental health. He nodded, scribbling. That's solid. And we'll need an expert psychological evaluation. Someone who can testify that you're cognitively sharp. I hesitated. You think they'll really go that far? They already have, he said gently. Filing for conservatorship means they're willing to swear you're not competent. They'll bring witnesses, neighbors, maybe even a doctor they pay. It's what they do when they can't win with love. His tone was calm, but I saw the storm behind his eyes. The quiet anger of a man who's seen too many mothers treated like accounts instead of people. We spent hours organizing evidence. He recorded my voice as I recounted everything from the wedding that never invited me to the moment. Janelle slipped the note under my hand. This recording, he said, captures intent and memory. No one with dementia remembers betrayal this clearly. When we finished, it was almost dark. Mr. Webb leaned back, exhausted but satisfied. They'll try to corner you emotionally at the hearing. Stay steady. Answer clearly. Never raise your voice. The truth doesn't need volume. I smiled. I've spent a lifetime whispering my truth into rooms that wouldn't listen. I think I can handle that. He chuckled softly. You remind me of my grandmother. She fought her own family over land once. She said, the moment you stop defending your name, someone else starts writing it for you. I looked at the documents spread across his desk. My life turned into folders, tabs, affidavits. Then let's make sure they never hold the pen again. Before I left, he handed me a manila envelope. This contains your medical reports, the new bank authorizations, and the witness contact forms. Keep it somewhere safe, not in your house. Somewhere neutral. Neutral? He nodded. Because I don't think this is over. People who feel entitled to your life don't give up when you say no. They regroup. When I got home, I placed the envelope inside a hollow space beneath the old piano, a hiding spot Robert had built during the 1977 blackout. For important things, he used to say. I smiled at the memory. He'd always believed in hidden safes and visible honesty. I made tea and sat by the window again. The packet from the court still lay unopened on the table. I looked at it, but I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. I knew what it said. The same lie dressed in new stationery. That a woman who says no must be confused. That independence is insanity when it stops serving someone else. My phone vibrated once. A message from an unknown number. You don't know what you're doing. We'll take care of you, one way or another. I read it twice, then screenshot it, forwarding it straight to Mr. Webb. His reply came back in seconds. Good. Every threat is proof. Outside, a thin rain began to fall. Slow and deliberate. It tapped against the glass like fingers on a drum, steady and patient. And in that rhythm, I heard something new. Not fear, not sadness, readiness. The day before the hearing, the sky turned the color of a bruise. Rain slowed to a mist that made the street lamps glow like halos. And the neighborhood settled into that quiet that happens when people draw their curtains and decide to belong too. themselves for the night. I was finishing a bowl of soup in the kitchen when the doorbell chimed 3 times in a neat, impatient rhythm. Not the knock of a neighbor, the rhythm of someone who arrives with a plan. The new cameras woke on my phone front step, side gate, back alley, each square a small theater with its own stage. On the porch, Elliot, jaw locked, Marina, smile already performing, and a woman in a blazer carrying a black briefcase with gold hinges. Behind them, a 4th figure hovered at the edge of the frame, a man with a navy coat and a leather portfolio. I recognized that portfolio shaped the way you recognize a Storm mobile notary. I didn't open the door. I switched on the porch speaker instead. "State your business." "Mom, please," Elliot said into the camera, hands lifted as if he were surrendering, though his eyes didn't know how. "Can we come in and talk like adults?" "We're already adults," I replied. "Adults talk at decent hours with appointments. This is neither." The woman in the blazer stepped forward and held up a laminated badge. "Elder Care Advocate," it read at the top, though the fine print named a private agency I didn't recognize. "I'm Ms. Carver," she said, voice syruped with training. "I've been retained to assist with your safety and financial clarity." "I have both," I said. "Good evening." From off frame, the notary cleared his throat. "Mrs. Whitmore, I can simply witness signatures." 5 minutes. 5 minutes is what thieves ask for when the vault is already open, I said, and almost laughed at how old and familiar that metaphor felt in my mouth. Marina leaned into the camera's field, her lashes wet with rehearsal. "Mama, oh, we brought dinner. Your favorite rosemary chicken. You haven't been eating properly. We're worried." She lifted a paper bag toward the lens, the performance complete with prop. "I just finished my soup," I said. "Set it on the step. You can pick up the bag in the morning." Elliot's jaw tightened. "Mom, stop making this harder. We brought the good papers. Ms. Carver will explain." "Don't," I said, and my voice was so soft the microphone almost missed it. But the softness wasn't weakness. It was the weight you hear when a door closes with all its hinges in place. My phone buzzed. "Mr. Webb." I put him on speaker, aligning the screen so his voice would carry through the porch intercom. "Good evening," he said calmly. "All of you should know this property is under surveillance, and my client has legal representation present by phone. Any attempt to coerce signatures will be recorded and submitted to the court tomorrow." Ms. Carver adjusted her blazer, eyes narrowing just a degree. "No one is coercing anyone, counselor. We're here to facilitate reconciliation and continuity of care." "Continuity of care," Mr. Webb repeated, dry as chalk. "Is that what your agency calls ambushing a 74-year-old woman at dusk with a notary and a stack of documents on the eve of a conservatorship hearing?" The notary shifted his portfolio. Marina's smile faltered. Elliot glanced at the camera as if it had insulted him. "You can leave now," I said. "You can bring whatever version of love you've rented for the evening to someone else's porch." The side gate alert pinged. Another motion. My thumb flicked the secondary camera to figures slipping toward the backyard. Mr. Davis, the frowning neighbor from 2 houses down, and a woman I didn't know. Ms. Carver's agency must have invited an audience or witnesses. "Police will be called in 60 seconds if you remain on the property," Mr. Webb said, his metronome voice unchanged. 59, 58, "Mom," Elliot snapped, anger spilling through the cracks in his careful face. "This is sick. You're letting strangers turn you against your own family." I thought of Janelle's folded note. I thought of Caleb's scratched cylinders. I thought of the court packet on my table and the man who said, "You've been served, ma'am. Good afternoon." I thought of my husband teaching me how to hold a wrench and a boundary, both with two hands. I'm not against my family, I said. I'm against theft. Marina took a breath to speak, but Ms. Carver slid a hand between them in a gesture that said, now I do my job. Mrs. Whitmore, if you're declining assistance, I'll need you to state clearly for the record that you are aware of the risks to your well-being, and you are refusing supportive services. For your record, I said, I am aware of the risks of opening my door to people who treat me like an account. I decline. 30. Mr. Webb counted. 29. The notary tried to salvage the moment. Ma'am, one signature could prevent tomorrow's. One signature caused tonight, I said. Rain ticked on the porch light. Somewhere, a siren threaded the dark like a needle. In the side gate camera, Mr. Davis lifted his phone to record, as if my refusal were a spectacle he could sell for likes. The woman with him whispered something that made him hesitate. Perhaps decency still exists in this world, I thought. It's just quieter than greed. 10. Mr. Webb said. Elliot dropped the dinner bag on the doormat like an accusation. The rosemary leaked through as an oil-dark stain. He stepped close to the camera until his breath fogged the lens. You're going to regret this, he said, voice low. Tomorrow, the judge will see you exactly the way you're acting, confused and manipulated. I felt the anger rise, the kind that used to boil over when I was younger. It came up hot, then cooled, like it had learned some manners with age. Tomorrow, I said, the judge will see a woman who learned to read before she learned to give away her name. Ms. Carver, to her credit, knew when a door didn't want to open. She touched Elliot's sleeve, spoke to the notary in a tone that said, this is a bad bet. The Navy coat nodded. They turned. The group receded, tiny shapes shrinking into rain. The camera's motion squares went still. My phone went quiet. I let my shoulders drop. The kitchen clock clicked from 7:59 to 8 o'clock. The smallest ceremony a house can perform. We are still here. 2 minutes later, there was another knock, gentle, uncertain. I checked the monitor. Janelle stood alone on my porch, hair flattened by mist, a grocery sack tucked against her chest like a shy gift. I opened the door to the chain. You shouldn't be here, I said, but I didn't mean it like a scold. I meant it like a prayer. I clocked out and saw. All that, she said. I'm sorry. I brought bread and milk. You don't have to take them. I didn't like the way it felt. Me neither, I said, and slid the chain. I took the bag, still warm from the store. You keep doing brave things, Janelle. She shook her head. I'm just trying to do the right thing before the world explains why I shouldn't. She looked past me toward the table. Is that the court packet? It is. You're going to win, she said, and her certainty was so young it almost hurt. People who sign things like that. She nodded toward the notary's absence. Don't believe in judges. They believe in shortcuts. I wanted to hug her. The way older women hug younger ones when words can't carry the blessing they mean. Instead, I squeezed her hand. Go home, I said. Be safe. When she left, I set the bread on the counter, wiped the rosemary stain from the mat, and turned off the porch light. The house sighed around me, a whole organism settling back into itself after a spasm. I carried the court packet to the piano and laid it on the closed lid. The wood reflected the paper like a pond reflects a cloud. True, but powerless to claim the sky. I brewed tea, left it untouched. I checked each lock front, side, kitchen touching metal like rosary beads. I set my alarm for dawn. Tomorrow I would dress the way my mother taught me to meet trouble. Clean lines, clear eyes, quiet mouthed in the hallway mirror. I saw the life I had left, pearls like small moons at my throat, grief like a seam stitched tight. And something else I hadn't seen in a very long time. A posture that didn't bend toward other people's hunger. The bruise-colored sky outside my windows darkened to ink. Somewhere in that darkness, a paper waited to be read aloud by a stranger in a room with flags. I closed the curtains and let the night do what it does best. Teach you the difference between being alone and being safe in the quiet that followed. I heard it again, the hum of clarity. It doesn't beg. It doesn't shout. It just stays. And I stayed with it, counting the hours until morning. The courthouse smelled like old paper and winter air. That mix of dust, polish, and nerves that clings to places where people are weighed. I arrived early because that's what my husband used to do. If you must fight, Odessa, he once told me, arrive before your enemy knows where to stand. Mr. Webb was already there, sleeves rolled up, files arranged with the neatness of a soldier laying out his weapons. You look calm, he said. I iron my fear, I replied. It behaves better that way. He smiled faintly, then leaned closer. Remember, they need to prove you're incapable. We just have to show you're not. Clarity beats sympathy. The bailiff opened the door, and the air shifted. Inside, the courtroom was smaller than I imagined. Wood panels. A long table that could hold both truth and deceit side by side. Elliot and Marina sat across the aisle. He wore a new suit that didn't know his shape yet. She was wrapped in black, a widow's costume for a funeral that hadn't happened. When our eyes met, her smile was polite and poisonous. The judge, Honorable Grace Atwell, entered. She wasn't what I expected. No gray hair or tremor of age. She was middle-aged, sharp, and observant. The kind of woman who had learned to find truth in posture, not in words. Let's begin, she said simply. Their lawyer stood first. Mr. Fenton, the type who built his reputation on polite cruelty. Your Honor, he began. We are here because Mrs. Odessa Whitmore has demonstrated alarming mental decline, erratic behavior, financial paranoia, and isolation. Our clients seek only to protect her well-being. Protect. The word curled like smoke. He called Marina first. She approached the stand like a tragic actress. Mrs. Whitmore was once my second mother, she said, tears perfectly timed. But lately, she's become confused. She shuts us out, accuses us of theft. We only want to make sure she's safe. Mr. Webb rose for cross-examination. Mrs. Turner, is it true that you and your husband requested joint access to my client's bank accounts? She blinked. It was for convenience. Convenience for whom? For the family. And is it also true you and your husband hosted a wedding she was not invited to? Marina's throat tightened. It was small, yet public enough for hundreds of photos online. Webb interrupted softly. Do you consider excluding the woman who paid your rent for 3 years a sign of concern for her well-being? Marina's eyes darted toward Elliot. You're twisting. No, Mrs. Turner, Webb said, leaning forward. That's what you did to her. The room murmured. The judge raised a hand for silence. Next came Elliot. My son. His oath sounded like an apology said through clenched teeth. My mother has changed, he told the court. She's paranoid. She's letting strangers control her. She called the police on me. Did you break into her house, Mr. Whitmore? Webb asked. I had keys. Did she give you permission to enter that day? He hesitated. No. But, so you entered without consent, reviewed her private papers, and brought a lawyer to convince her to sign a power of attorney? She needed help. He snapped. Or you needed access? Webb's voice stayed calm. Did you know she canceled the automatic transfers before or after your visit? Elliot's face burned. Before. So the help you offered arrived only when the money stopped. Interesting timing. The judge's pen stopped moving. For a moment, the courtroom hung in quiet balance, as if everyone could hear the weight of logic landing. Then came Mr. Davis, the neighbor. He declared that I had fits of paranoia, that I installed cameras because I thought people were watching me. Webb's cross was short, double quotes Mr. Davis. Have you ever spoken to my client? No. Then your diagnosis is based on what? Observation. Observation from your window? Well, yes. Then you may continue observing from there, Mr. Davis. This court needs witnesses, not voyeurs. A ripple of restrained laughter passed through the room. Even the judge's mouth twitched. When their side finished, Webb turned to me. Your Honor, my client will testify. Walking to the stand felt like crossing a bridge back to myself. The clerk swore me in. My right hand didn't tremble. Mrs. Whitmore, Webb began gently. Why did you decide to end financial support for your son? Because love should not require payment, I said. The words left me steady, anchored. For 3 years, I funded their lives. Rent, bills, gifts. I paid more than $33,000 from my savings. When I asked for nothing in return, they called it love. When I stopped, they called it madness. The courtroom stilled. Webb handed me my bank statements, each page marked. Did you personally authorize these transfers? Yes. Did anyone co-sign or manage your accounts? No. He nodded. Mrs. Whitmore, how did you recognize the risk? I told them about the cashier's note, about the forged documents, about the locks, about the quiet realization that being used politely is still being used. When I finished, even Judge Atwell looked momentarily human, not judicial. Just a woman seeing another woman survive something she recognized. Fenton tried to shake me. Mrs. Whitmore, you claim perfect clarity. Isn't it possible your age affects your judgment? Of course, I said. Age has made my judgment sharper. It taught me that people who call themselves protectors often mean owners. He had no reply. When the recess bell rang, I stayed seated. Outside, rain streaked the courtroom windows, turning the world into watercolor. Mr. Webb leaned close. You just dismantled them, he whispered. I exhaled slowly. No, I said. I just told the truth in a language they stopped understanding. When court reconvened after recess, the room felt rearranged, as if truth had shifted the furniture while we were gone. The judge's pen lay still. Her eyes were not the kind you could decorate with performance. Mr. Webb rose first. Your Honor, he said, the petitioners have offered feelings. We have offered facts. He lifted one folder at a time. Transfers authorized by my client. Voluntary, regular, labeled. A cashier who risked her job to warn of an immediate, durable power of attorney presented without independent counsel. Locks showing signs of copied keys. And evidence that concern began only when the money stopped. He paused. This is not guardianship. It is attempted ownership. Mr. Fenton smoothed his tie and stood. Your Honor, age is not an insult. It's a reality. Confusion happens. Paranoia happens. The respondents simply, petitioners. The judge corrected. He blinked. Petitioners simply ask for protection in the least restrictive form. Temporary conservatorship. Least restrictive to whom? Mr. Webb murmured, not quite under his breath. Judge Atwell steepled her fingers. I will hear the remaining witnesses. We called Dr. Patel first. She sat straight-backed, physician calm. Mrs. Whitmore is my patient of 8 years. Blood work, blood pressure, neurological screenings, all within healthy range. No cognitive red flags. She sometimes forgets why she walked into a room, she added dryly, like the rest of us. Mr. Fenton tried to pry. Doctor, can clarity fluctuate? Hydration fluctuates. Clarity here is intact. Next, Caleb Torres and Nia. Caleb held up the scarred cylinder like a relic. See those fine abrasions? That's a technique to impression a key. Someone copied it. Nia described the worn strike plate, the not quite forced, not quite gentle entries that tell a story of entitlement. She fixed it, Nia said, chin lifted. Now the house answers to her again. Then Janelle. She looked smaller in the witness chair than she had across a bank counter, but her voice was steadier than anyone expected. I slipped the note because I heard things. I saw authorizations pre-filled, a rush to consolidate while Mrs. Whitmore sat outside. She asked calm questions. They gave fast answers. I was scared she'd sign her life into someone else's pen. Mr. Fenton sharpened his smile. Ms. Carter, do you often involve yourself in customers' private matters? No, she said, only when theft dresses up as customer service. A low, honest ripple moved through the room. The judge did not smile, but the corner of her eyes changed, a microscopic nod to courage. Lastly, Mr. Webb called Dr. Rowan, a forensic psychologist with soft shoes and hard data. She described the evaluation she'd conducted the previous afternoon. Executive function, intact. Working memory, above average. Financial comprehension, precise. Psychological presentation, consistent with recent boundary setting. In the context of chronic familial pressure, she folded her hands. If Mrs. Whitmore is incompetent, then competence has no meaning. Mr. Fenton rose for cross, but even his questions seemed to know they had nowhere left to go. Isn't it possible an elder could be manipulated by neighbors and a crafty lawyer? Dr. Rowan tilted her head. It's possible for anyone to be manipulated. Here, the evidence indicates the opposite. She was being manipulated, and she stopped. When the witnesses ended, the room held a clean quiet. That's the kind of quiet that comes after a storm. Not empty, just rinsed. Closing, the judge said. Mr. Fenton tried a final pivot. Your Honor, we empathize with the respondent's emotions, but the law must guard against risk. A temporary conservatorship would simply allow the petitioners to control her assets. Mr. Webb finished, not looking at him. Your Honor, the petitioners want a shortcut through my client's name. The law does not sell keys to that door. The judge nodded once and lowered her gaze to the file. Then to me, then to Elliot and Marina. I don't require long speeches, she said. I require clarity. She removed her glasses. Paper rustled. Time thinned. This court finds, she began, voice level and unhurried, that Mrs. Odessa Whitmore is in full possession of her mental faculties. There is no credible medical or psychological evidence indicating incompetence. Her financial choices, including the cessation of support to adult relatives, are rational and within her rights. Marina's hand tightened on Elliot's sleeve. He stared at the table as if it had betrayed him. Furthermore, the judge continued, the testimony and documents strongly suggest an ongoing pattern of elder financial pressure by the petitioners. The petition for temporary conservatorship is denied with prejudice. A sound left my body I didn't know I'd been holding. It wasn't a sob. It was the opposite, a quiet untying. Judge Atwell wasn't finished. This court also issues a no-contact order regarding financial matters. All communications with Mrs. Whitmore must be directed through counsel for 90 days. The court recommends the respondent's security measures remain in place. Any attempt to circumvent them will be viewed as harassment. Mr. Fenton shifted as if the floor had moved. Elliot finally looked up. searching the judge for some corner of mercy that matched his definition. He didn't find it. Mrs. Whitmore, the judge added, turning to me with a softness she hadn't shown anyone else. You are entitled to live with the boundaries you choose. The law recognizes that your voice is your property. Thank you, Your Honor, I said. The words were simple. The weight behind them was not. The gavel didn't slam. It simply touched wood, a punctuation mark, not a threat. Court adjourned, the room exhaled. People stood. Papers shuffled into their briefcases like small, obedient animals. Mr. Webb squeezed my hand. Not a victory grip, but a steadying one. You did beautifully, he said, not loud. True. Across the aisle, Marina's tears finally arrived, late and useless. Elliot's mouth shaped a sentence I didn't receive. It wasn't for me anymore. They left with their lawyer, gathering their dignity like a coat dropped in public. Dignity is heavy when you haven't carried it in a while. Outside, the sky had opened into clean light. The courthouse steps were damp, shining. Janelle waited at the bottom, her work badge tucked into her pocket as if courage could be folded away for later. Did you? We did, I said. You helped. She nodded, eyes bright. I'm glad I wrote the note. So am I said. One small paper kept my whole life from going blank. Mr. Webb joined us. There will be aftershocks, he cautioned. Demands. Apologies that are really requests. Stay with the plan. If they call, we answer. If they show up, we document. Your peace is not a negotiation. I looked past them to the city. Buses huffing. Pigeons arguing over a crumb. A stranger laughing into her scarf. The world hadn't changed, but I had. The strangest part of freedom is how ordinary the street looks once you get there. We walked down the steps slowly, like people leaving a church after a sermon that finally said something true. Behind me, the building kept its stories. My name now shelved among them with the right label. At the curb, Mr. Webb shook my hand and headed for his car. Janelle waved and vanished into the noon crowd, a brave little light swallowed by a larger one. I stood a moment longer, feeling sunlight settle where fear had lived. Then I opened my purse, slipped my keys into my palm, and smiled at the weight. Keys only answer to the hand that holds them. I turned toward home. 3 months passed. The air itself seemed different, as if the world had exhaled with me. My days no longer revolved around phone calls that drained the color from my mornings. I woke with the soft clink of sunlight on glass, brewed coffee only for 1 cup, and let silence sit across from me like a loyal friend. Freedom doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with the hum of a refrigerator you bought for yourself, and the sound of your own name, spoken kindly in your head. I sold the old house a month after the verdict, not out of bitterness, out of peace. Its walls had seen enough. I found a modest apartment overlooking the river, a place where dawn poured itself through wide windows and nothing smelled of old arguments. I filled it with quiet things, books, lilies, a new piano that held no secrets inside. I painted the living room a pale yellow, the color of forgiveness. And every evening, I watched the sun melt into the water and thought, this is what ownership feels like. The first letter from Elliot arrived in April. No return address. Just my name written in the handwriting of a boy who once brought me wildflowers from the park. Mom, I'm sorry. We were scared. We thought we were helping. The words were carefully measured, polite, like a man apologizing to a stranger. I folded the letter and placed it in the piano bench, next to Robert's photograph. I didn't reply. Some doors don't need slamming. They just need to stay closed. Marina sent an email 2 weeks later. No apology this time, just news. She was working again, at a small marketing firm downtown. I read it twice, then smiled. Maybe reality had finally asked her to earn something without borrowing it. Perhaps that was justice enough. Webb called occasionally, checking in like a brother I'd somehow inherited. You know, he said once, you've become something of a legend in elder law circles. I laughed. I don't want to be a legend, I said. I just wanted my peace. That, he replied, is what legends always say. In May, Janelle came to visit. She'd transferred to a new bank branch, promotion and a raise. For doing the right thing, she told me. I made tea, and we sat on my balcony, watching a swan glide across the river like an old soul that finally learned to move without hurry. You taught me something, she said. That growing older doesn't mean shrinking smaller. I thought of all the women I'd met since the trial. Eleanor, Nia, Dr. Patel, the garden club ladies who sent letters full of warmth and recipes. A sisterhood of resilience I never knew existed until life broke me open enough to see it. We met once a month for lunch now, each of us bringing stories of boundaries set, of phone numbers blocked, of lives reclaimed. We toasted not to revenge, but to rediscovery. Sometimes I still miss the version of Elliot who used to hold my hand crossing the street. But I've learned to let memory be memory, not prophecy. Love can live without permission. It just stops funding its own extinction. On the day I turned 75, I walked to the art store downtown and bought new brushes. I spent the afternoon painting a single image, a key resting on an open palm. Above it, in gentle script, I wrote, mine. That night, I sat by the window, watching the city lights ripple on the river's skin. A letter lay unopened on the table, maybe from my son, maybe from no one. I didn't rush to read it. Some things can wait. I poured myself a glass of wine and whispered to the empty room, you did it, Odessa. The house didn't answer. It didn't need to. The silence around me was full, not empty, like the pause between heartbeats. When life catches its breath. And to you, listening now, I'll say this. Don't let anyone convince you that protecting your peace is selfish. The world will call you cold for closing doors they used to walk through freely. Let them knock. Let them talk. You owe no explanations for surviving in your own name. If my story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to Whispers of Mama Ruth, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love reading your stories, too. They remind me that healing is never lonely. Until next time, my dears, may your heart stay steady, your boundaries strong, and your love always honest.